My name is Ewan. I'm a social worker, addiction counselor, and I'm in long-term recovery. Today we're going to be talking about the basics of relapse prevention. The ability to guard against a slip or a relapse is one of the most important skills to develop in recovery. The definition of relapse is a recurrence of substance use or destructive behavior after a period of abstinence. A slip is a brief return to substance or behavior engagement. A full relapse is a return to a more sustained use. There are some important things to know about relapse. The first is that it often happens gradually, and that process starts long before a return to substance or behavior engagement. The process of relapse can start weeks or even months before you get loaded or act out. It can begin slowly and gain momentum, kind of like a snowball at the top of the mountain that turns into an avalanche in the valley below. Understanding this is key. Being able to recognize the early warning signs allows for plenty of time for intervention. It's now time to answer some questions about what is a relapse. We are going to break the relapse cycle down into three basic stages. These stages are emotional relapse, mental relapse, and physical relapse. Let's first talk about emotional relapse. The key with emotional relapse is that you're not thinking about using. The obsessive thoughts of returning to use have not started. However, you may feel off. Some of the early warning signs of emotional relapse include the following: an increase in irritability. Feeling irritable and not knowing why. This can cause us to slip back into denying our feelings. We may begin to isolate physically, mentally, or emotionally. We may stop sharing because we don't understand what is wrong. This can cause a bottling up of emotions, especially if our emotions don't feel congruent with our current situation, or we do not want them, or we are rejecting them. People sometimes focus on outward things or others, projecting onto them to look for a reason for feeling off. Sometimes people reduce the amount of connection they're having with their support system or stop sharing honestly. They may stop asking for help, reducing the amount of time they're spending in the recovery program, or not going to meetings. Another major sign of emotional relapse is a reduction in basic self-care. A degradation in healthy eating habits, sleeping, exercise, and other pieces of our self-care program. Emotional relapse occurs when you stop looking after the basics, stop caring for yourself, especially at the level that you require. Other symptoms of emotional relapse include denial and delusion. We may feel off, but we don't know why, and so we try to deny that anything is wrong, both internally and externally. The root of emotional relapse is a breakdown in self-care. Let's take a few minutes to answer some questions about emotional relapse. If we persist in the zone of emotional relapse long enough, neglecting our self-care, not sharing our feelings, and reducing our recovery activities, eventually we will enter the next stage of the relapse process. This stage is mental relapse. Mental relapse is when our thoughts of using emerge again, or thoughts of using increase in severity and frequency. Some of the warning signs of mental relapse include focusing on other people, places, and things associated with our using. Starting to minimize our past negative consequences of our addictive use or behaviors is another sign. It may include rekindling our connections with people associated with our using, even if we are reaching out to them for other reasons. We start lying to ourselves, and maybe even lying to others, and we start to bargain with ourselves again. Maybe this time will be different. I can have just one. I deserve it. Nobody will know. We start to look for opportunities to use or act out without getting caught. Mental relapse is like a war in our mind. Our limbic system is obsessing about using, and our prefrontal cortex is warning us against the consequences. That dangerous voice inside our head gets louder and louder unless we address it. If we don't do something about it, it can lead to the next phase of relapse in the blink of an eye. Let's take some time to answer questions about mental relapse. If we don't take action to address our thoughts of using in mental relapse, we will eventually enter physical relapse. We will re-engage with our substance or behaviors that we are trying to avoid. So what can we do? How can we guard against engaging in the relapse cycle? The key is a solid relapse prevention plan, and especially looking after the basics. Engaging in that basic self-care really is the best defense. And that means getting a good night's sleep, eating 3 meals a day, asking for help, and sharing our feelings. Guarding against emotional relapse is just that simple. Staying connected and engaged in our recovery is the other major piece of relapse prevention. If we stay in regular contact with our support group, go to our recovery meetings, stay in touch with our professional support, and continue to work our recovery program when things are good, then our chances of doing the next healthy thing when we are struggling increase dramatically. If we find ourselves slipping into mental relapse in our thoughts or obsession about engaging with our addiction returns, it's important that we take further action. One thing we can do is thinking things through and considering the consequences if we relapse. How will we feel? What could we lose? Another strategy is to distract ourselves, go for a walk, engage in a healthy coping activity that we enjoy. If we can get through the next 30 minutes, we may be all right. Most cravings pass in a short time. One of the best strategies we can use is to share how we feel and talk to someone who understands. Reaching out to our recovery support or going to a meeting is an excellent way to handle a craving. Cravings are a burden that, when shared, are lessened, and that is something important to remember. I'll leave you now with some questions to consider about how to combat and stay safe against relapse. Thank you for joining us for this segment, and we will see you in the next one. Take care and stay safe.